Day just gone 1600 Central African time. My name is Mahendra Raghunath. On to our top story now. Outgoing Western Cape Premier Helen Zille is at the center of yet another social media storm. Zille took to her Twitter account to respond to an American speaker decrying white privilege. The former DA leader tweeted about the prevalence of black privilege in South Africa. In a veiled attack on the ANC, she wrote about a party that stole from the poor and yet it's back in power. Several prominent South Africans, including former public protector Professor Thuli Madonsela, entered the fray, demanding Helen Zille retract her black privilege comments. Well, let's now talk to Angelo Fick, the Director of Research at ASRI, who's on the line right now on Skype. On hybrid, sorry. Angelo, what is the storm behind about black privilege, if such a thing exists?
Well, I suspect that Helen Zille is best placed to decide and tell us what she meant by that phrase. This is not the first time that Helen Zille has taken on traditions of scholarship that go back 25 years, and it's not only on questions of social justice and or issues of race and anti-racism. She's done similar things on issues of HIV/AIDS and have had people who are experts in the field take her to task for it, and has had no effect on her behavior or her understanding of these issues. And I think part of the problem of Helen Zille's views in this particular case, as in previous cases, is a particular commitment, it seems, to an anti-intellectual vision of the world.
Now, Angelo, in a country that's still battling racial division, what do comments like this do, coming from a prominent South African like Helen Zille?
Well, I think personally we must acknowledge that it comes from a position of profound and deeply disrespectful ignorance. It is a disrespect for scholarship, it is a disrespect for scientific inquiry, and it is an insistence that superficial and facile views must have the same equivalence as views of people who spend their lives dedicated to studying phenomena. Secondly, I think it is highly irresponsible of Ms. Zille to do these sort of flippant remarks because she knows and increasingly is behaving like a shock jock, that whatever she says will have supporters and detractors, and it means that you are now down a very deep click hole where you have to debate issues that are really not worth debating at the level that Helen Zille wants to debate them. And here this is the equivalent of somebody saying that a photocopier is a giraffe, and you then have to spend hours, if not days, of your life telling the person and proving to them that the thing they call a giraffe is in fact a photocopier. It is facile debate, it leads nowhere, and it is highly dangerous in an incendiary environment.
Now, Helen Zille has often said she cannot be accused of racism because she fought against the apartheid regime. What's your view on that?
Well, to accuse Helen Zille of racism in this particular case is to give this more complexity than it actually has. The tragedy is that she makes her political life and so much of it on the basis of the work she did around Steve Biko. But the irony is that she came to that kind of white liberal position which she currently sticks to rather late, after people like Nadine Gordimer in the 70s already showed its limitations and its problematic application in South Africa. But Helen Zille seems either ignorant or seems to wash away or ignore that particular legacy of white intellectual engagement in South Africa. Speaks either to a disingenuity, a commitment to a politics that no longer seems to resound and echo with most people in this country, or there's a certain kind of intellectual ceiling that she seems unable to break through, because her understanding of these issues is the kind of understanding that one would barely pass at undergraduate level with a 50%. Her vision is entirely invested in I am right and everybody else is wrong, and no amount of evidence, no amount of scholarship, no amount of engaged, argument with her is ever seemingly going to change her view on any of these issues.
Now, these comments also come on the back of an interesting election where we saw the left and right growing, so there's greater polarization in our society. What effect will these comments have?
One imagines that they, as one can see from some social media activity, embolden the voices of people who felt that for the last 25 years things that they should or felt they should be embarrassed to say can now be said quite publicly. Helen Zille's movement towards, I think, increasingly a kind of making statements in order to elicit the kinds of responses that she has gotten on Twitter and on other social media platforms is, I think, a certain kind of politics that is increasingly kind of the stuff one sees in American shock jock culture. It is the kind of thing that she often, and members of her party have often decried for as the behavior of people inside the Economic Freedom Front fighters, as well as people inside the African National Congress. And here I think one has to be aware that if one spends too much of one's time elaborating the faults of one's enemies, one becomes, in a sense, a mirror image of them. And what many critics have argued is that Helen Zille is the face and is the representation of a democratic alliance that cannot let go of the old, cannot seem to cede authority, and cannot seem to acknowledge that its view of history and its view of the present, its dream of the future, is one that is caught in the torsions of the past, however much they wish to deny it. And this, I think, is part of why the DA's voters rejected it in the significant numbers that it did. And I think it's something that the Democratic Alliance, as the official opposition, has to do some very deep soul-searching of. Because Helen Zille's views in this instance, these are not exceptional to what we've seen from other DA members. Diane Kohler Barnard's views, for example, repeatedly and almost a recidivist approach to airing these, what they know to be deeply provoking and highly divisive views on social media, where they know they'll get a certain kind of attention. My position is to ignore this is slightly dangerous because these are people with political power. But to engage them as if they have a rational basis in scientific reasoning is, I think, a false, sort of route to follow, because it distracts us from the work we should be doing.
And looking at Helen Zille's future, with her leaving her powerful office and no position in the DA, do you think her voice and her view remain significant?
Well, they may not be significant for the majority of South Africans, and the Democratic Alliance, if it wishes to appeal to the majority of South Africans, may have to think about the place of views like that and to politics like that inside its ranks. But that is for the Democratic Alliance to do. But Helen Zille's position, Helen Zille's behavior, is not exceptional in global politics. She is quite reminiscent of people like Anne Widdecombe in the Conservative Party of the United Kingdom, who, once they are no longer in positions of power in the party, proceed, or public prominence in the party, proceed to reveal and unearth views that are very much at odds with what the mainstream in the party wishes to communicate about itself. And that, I think, is a danger for the political formation, which is the Democratic Alliance, if it has a desire to grow beyond 20%, if it has a desire in the next generation to challenge the African National Congress's dominance in politics, and if it has a desire to continue to have an existence as something other than a marginal or fringe or secondary consequence of political activity in South Africa. This is a majority black country, this is a majority young country, this is a majority poor country. The kind of politics practiced by people who poll at 10% and lower in elections is not something that the official opposition in any country could possibly be interested in. And so to speak to the vision of the majority of people in this country, the Democratic Alliance might have to do very deep soul-searching of the kind that people like Athol Trollip projected onto voters. It is the party, its structures, its people. They have to appeal to the majority of voters. And they cannot keep decrying that it is the voters or the majority or somehow at odds. And one sees the same kind of white liberal apartheid-era vanguardism, this idea that one knows better for everybody else, from senior figures in the party, which will have to be addressed.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Angelo. We'll have to leave it there. Director of Research at ASRI, Angelo Fick, joining us on the line.